You know, sometimes the biggest innovations start in the most unexpected places. Have you ever heard of an idea so powerful it jumped right off the page of a PhD dissertation and into the real world? Well, that's exactly the story we're diving into today. It all starts with Dr. Kyle J. Chalko's research, called Learning in the Midst of Action, and a really weird problem he uncovered.
So get this. The research kicks off with this totally mind-bending fact. The Assemblies of God is one of the most undereducated religious groups in America. And you'd think that would be something to, work on, right? But here's the twist. A lot of their ministers are actually proud of that. I mean, that just makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Why on earth would anyone be proud of being undereducated? And that's the exact question Dr. Chalko's research set out to answer. Because maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about people not wanting to learn. Maybe the problem was with the education system itself. And what he found was this huge disconnect. It wasn't that these pastors were against learning, not at all. It was more like there were two totally different value systems clashing. Okay, check this out. On one side, you have the pastors. They're in the trenches, right? They need practical skills, real-world application, mentoring from people who've been there. But then you look at what traditional seminary was offering, and it was all abstract theory, classroom learning, and academic credentials. They were basically on two different planets, speaking two different languages. So how do you even begin to fix a problem like that? Well, the answer wasn't some flashy, brand new idea. Actually, to solve this very modern problem, the research looked way back to an ancient Greek concept. And that concept has this amazing name, Phronesis. You might not have heard it before, but it's brilliant. It's not just about knowing what to do. It's about having the practical wisdom to know how and why to do it in a real-world, messy situation. Think of it like this. It's the difference between just knowing the textbook and actually knowing how to help a real person. The dissertation used this awesome analogy from Barry Schwartz. A wise person is like a jazz musician. Yeah, they know the notes, they know the theory. But what makes them great is that they know how to improvise, how to feel the music and create something beautiful on the spot. That's phronesis. It's knowing the rules, but more importantly, knowing when to bend them to make something amazing happen.
All right, so phronesis is the goal, that practical jazz musician-style wisdom. How do you actually teach that? How do you create an education system that builds improvisers instead of just rule followers?
Well, the solution wasn't about tearing everything down and starting from scratch. Instead, the dissertation talked about it like creating a new recipe made from old elements. You take good ingredients that already exist, but you combine them in a whole new way.
So what's in this new recipe? 4 main things. First, it had to be serious, graduate-level stuff. Second, it had to be fully online, so busy people could actually do it. Third, it needed to be super focused on ministry, no fluff. And fourth, and this is the big one, it had to be built around a hands-on practicum, learning in the midst of action, right? And here are the secret ingredients that made it all work. First, something called competency-based education. That just means you move on when you prove you've learned something, not just because you sat in a chair for a semester. Then, prior learning assessment. You get credit for the experience you already have. So smart. And finally, you could pick your own mentor, someone you trusted. See? The whole thing was designed to fit a student's life, not the other way around. Okay, and this is where the story takes a turn from interesting theory to something really special. Because this whole dissertation, this whole idea, it didn't just end up collecting dust on a library shelf. It was a plan. So, Dr. Kyle J. Chalko finishes this research at George Fox University. He's got the theoretical groundwork, the recipe is all written out. It's a fantastic academic achievement. But the story didn't end on paper, because remember the whole point? Phronesis, practical wisdom. You can't just write about that. You have to do it. The dissertation wasn't the destination, it was the treasure map. So that dissertation became the actual launch pad for a real organization called Pathway. They literally took the blueprint from the research and built it. And today it's making ministry education accessible for everyone at pathway.training. So, the big question is, did it work? Well, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Pathway has students in over 20 states now, and get this age range. The youngest student is 14, and the oldest is 84. I mean, if that doesn't prove that there was a huge need for this, I don't know what does. And that brings us to the most powerful takeaway from this whole story. It proves, without a doubt, that people want to learn. They are hungry for it. The problem was never the student. It's the educator's job to make learning affordable, to make it accessible, and to make it actually matter in the real world.
So, I'll leave you with this question. This whole thing started by solving a very specific problem for pastors. But if this idea of learning in the midst of action works so incredibly well there, where else could we use it? Think about it. Business, nursing, tech, the skilled trades. What part of our world is just waiting for an educational revolution like this one?